Hello.
Claudia, thank you very much for taking our call. So I was looking through, skimming through actually the report that you presented to the Human Rights Council today. And we would like to speak a bit about what your findings and how you built over your predecessor, who had started also some research in the aspects of issues of discrimination, ageism, and how it has been even exacerbated by the COVID-19 health crisis.
Yeah.
Why data is so important.
Without data, you have no idea how are the realities of all the persons, and your measures won't be precise and they won't help. To make it simple in a way, if we don't have the information about the older persons around the world, everything is incomplete and fragmented, and most countries simply don't have any data, and therefore they are not sure how to improve the situation and what to do exactly on the national level. So if we don't have any data, it doesn't, everything or every measure is not really exactly, because we don't know to what extent we further and strengthen the living realities of older persons.
And what struck you the most in your assessment of the findings of your predecessor?
What struck me the most is that older persons are totally overlooked in the data in most countries. So when we really have a check what's going on, we know more or less nothing, because most of the data gathering has an age cut on 60 or 65, and we know nothing about, you know, the oldest old persons. And what is also not taken into account is the heterogeneity of the group of older persons. There is not one older person and the model doesn't fit all. They are so diverse, and what we also heard also today in the discussion, for example, LGBTIQ older persons are mostly overlooked. They are not taken into account. And this is something we really have to raise our voices to make states, governments, statistics aware that older persons are not just age 65, they are a diverse group and with very different approaches all over the world and with totally different living conditions around the world.
Yes, absolutely. That's what also I remarked that, you know, usually the statistics offices will look from 55 to 60 and then 60 to 65. And there is no granularity in how we look and perceive, and also how we look at different factors, right? Like social, economic easiness, right? Of course, people who have been able to plan and have good retirement incomes will have better health, will live longer, healthier lives. But the majority of the population is not being counted and is being lumped into this category. And what you see is the role of the new technologies, because that is something that's very prominent in the past report and in this report too, that there are so many things, good things that can be done in order to actually count the elderly in our societies, but also to make their lives better.
Yeah. I think there are pros and cons for new technologies. On the first hand, we have still a lack, you know, older persons are not taking into account when we have a look on the new technologies. They are not part of the design. So from my perspective, it's not an age-sensitive thing when we look at the new designs of, for example, smartphones or computers. Most older persons are not taking into account, you know, what would they like? How should it look like? What needs to be taken into account to make it easy for them to access the tools and to get the knowledge there. On the other hand, what we also have seen through COVID-19, for example, is when older persons are quarantined, and if they are, you know, staying at home and they are aware how to use and have access to new technologies, it was much easier for them to get yeah, to speak with their loved ones and be part of their life still. But there are many older persons who are left behind in this regard. For example, what we have heard from care homes, there is no access to the new tools, there is no access to internet. This is also true for many rural areas. So when we're talking about new technologies, we also have to keep a bigger picture in mind, which might be like the resources, in rural areas or in countries where we don't have access to the internet in every single part of the country, for example. So from my point of view, we need, first of all, we need to ensure that older persons have access to it, which also needs to take into account that they have a chance to learn how to use the tools, because lifelong learning very often does not include technologies for older persons, so they are left behind in this regard as well, because they are not seen as part of the workforces, which is also not true, because they have many positive aspects which they give our society and our positive parts of society. We have seen this in COVID-19 as well. There is much they can add to society, and they are not only a burden of society, which we have seen on many ageist approaches. And on the other hand, what you already said, we have a good chance to improve the life of older persons through technologies, to help them, to assist them, also to make life easier in health-related issues, for example, or to give them a helping hand for when they are staying at home and nobody's there, but maybe some kind of, robotic assistance might be a very useful tool for them, or to give them some hints that they need to take their medicine, for example. These are very useful tools. Also to have telecommunication, for example, with the doctors, which is also quite easy for some of them, but not for the others. But what I also think is very true is that we have to check that they really know what exactly these automated technologies, what kind of data they bring to their providers. So the older person have to be aware of the risk, which kind of data they are delivering. So they only, or let's say it the other way around, it is only appropriate if it's to their full consent. So then I think there's not a big risk, but still nobody of us is really aware what kind of data or what kind of access the data we are using every day is going to the provider and gives advice what we like and what we love.
Yes, consent and also understanding how valuable this data is. Questions of privacy, I think, are coming to the fore now. In particular, this year, the United Nations World Data Forum takes place, as you know, in October in Bern, and several of these issues will be on the table to be discussed. And certainly, but right now, what we're looking, it seems like when I speak with the statisticians, both at the UN agencies and in national statistics office, is this concern that there is a lack of data, right? Of accurate, good data in certain segments of the population that will not allow us to actually effectively monitor the impact of the measures we are taking in order to achieve the UN development goals. So what were your recommendations to wrap it up in today's meetings?
Yeah, what my recommendations were is to include older person, in all the data structural processes, and to let them participate also in the design, what kind of design they would like from the technologies, but also from research, for example. And what I would also like to say once again and reiterate is that the heterogeneity of older persons and also the socioeconomic factors and the lifelong approach needs to be part how we assess an older person also in our data, because this would then be reliable data and this might help us all.
Thank you very much. Claudia Mahler, a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Independent advisor for the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. So thank you very much, Claudia. So you are staying a few days more. You are also part of other discussions, or today was the presentation, and that's
Yeah.
now you do just field work and, until the next session takes place.
Yes, I'm based in Berlin, and I'm still waiting if we can do our field work because of COVID-19. On a regular basis, we would do 2 country visits per year, but under these circumstances, we are not quite sure how it works, and this is not good for the mandate, because I think from our point of view, the country visits are the most valuable tools to get in contact with all the persons and learn more about the realities in their countries. And those are the good practices we can bring back to the other countries.
Right, because now you have to rely on people in the country to actually gather the data or speak with people and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speaking with the UN Brief. A pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.